All right, 30 teams, 30 minutes. We're going to do the Celtics today with my bro, Eric. Big Celtics fan. So before we get started, what do you think? Just give me your general feelings about the Celtics team this year.
I'm just down on them. The roster is bad. I don't see them. They're not a contender. If I had to give my honest assessment, I'm a big Celtics fan. I've thought that they were a contender the last 2 years. I thought they had a serious chance to win last year and the year before that, Kyrie's last season. But this season, I'm down on them. There's a lot of reasons why I'm down on them that we'll get into. But as of now, I don't think they're a contender. I think they're the latter in the Eastern Conference, anywhere from 5 to 8 is where I have them.
So I saw, and I didn't know that he had a major injury, but it doesn't look like Kemba, he's not going to be back to like January, February, you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
And lost Gordon Hayward. Big free agency additions were Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson, and they have that massive $27 million trade exception. So I was playing around with the trade exception to see who could fit in it. And there's not a one singular like impact player. Like the one thing that we've been throwing around is trying to find Blake Griffin trades. And I was thinking maybe a Blake Griffin trade would make sense for the Celtics, but the exception is not big enough. What did you think about them not taking the Hayward trade that was rumored from Indiana?
Well, it from the stuff that I read and things that I heard on different podcasts is that they weren't high on Miles Turner and they weren't high on his contract, and they kind of called around the league to see what would be the return on Miles Turner. So I kind of understand that if you're not high on Miles Turner and you don't want to pay him 17 or 18 million, whatever he's owed this year and down the road, you don't want to pay that. Okay, if that makes sense. But I that as if you're Danny Ainge and you had to kind of foresee Gordon Hayward leaving, and you should have had a backup plan as to how you were going to bolster this roster and make it a roster that could contend. So I understand not wanting to have Miles Turner's contract because you don't feel he's that kind of player and what he brings on the floor can elevate you, or you can't find a return for him. I understand that, but he still should have had a plan B in the case of Gordon Hayward leaving, to bolster the roster and give themselves a chance to compete in the Eastern Conference.
You see, the thing with me was with the Gordon Hayward trade was because I think they got surprised that the Hornets got into it in the last second. They thought that it was just going to be them in Indiana and they were just going to play a game of chicken, and eventually Indiana would fold, because I think that they wanted like what was offered was Turner and Warren, and they wanted Turner and Oladipo. And I could see like people have kind of soured on Miles Turner. And I was always a proponent, and you know that I talked to you about this. I thought the Celtics had too many players that needed the ball in their hands. And I felt that it wasn't a coincidence that it was during a Kemba injury and a Hayward injury that Tatum really took off last year, because the ball was in his hands. It wasn't, spread between 4 people that need the ball. So I kind of like that. The problem is, like you mentioned, it's the depth in the team. And, a lot of people have given like Danny Ainge credit, and we've had our arguments about him throughout the years, but with all those first round picks that they have, to not have like a solid bench, like the bench should be stacked. And I wanted to read out a list of all the first round draft picks. And
about to get ugly.
It's ugly, and with all those picks, there's been rumors of the trade. You want to package a bunch of those picks for what's my man's name that's on Memphis? Justice Winslow. And I just think personally, with all those picks, he should have swung for the fences a little bit. And it seemed like he took a lot of safe picks if you look at like the history of it. So let's go to a basketball reference. I like the way that they set it up. So we'll start from we could start from 2016. So Jaylen Brown, they hit on that one. Yasabul, what is his name?
Yep.
Europe, Draymond
Dan,
Green.
Dancing Bear.
Yeah, Europe, Draymond Green. Uh,
Who's out of
he's out of the league already. Ante Zizic.
Zizic, who was traded to the Cavaliers in the Kyrie Irving trade,
Yeah.
who I do not still in the league.
Is he still in the league?
I don't believe so. I don't believe he's still in the league.
So the next year was Jason Tatum. That was the main pick. And then no other second round pick. You got Semi Ojeleye in the second round that year. Then 2018, you have Robert Williams. Then 2019, you have Romeo Langford, Matisse Thybulle, which you traded away. Grant Williams was a first round pick, and then Trayvon Waters. This year, you have 3 first round picks. You have the Desmond Bain character. I think you just traded him. You have Peyton Pritchard, and you have Aaron Nesmith. So, all these picks, you would think that the bench, and then you can even go back to 2015, Terry Rozier, you hit on him, but RJ Hunter was a miss. So all these picks, you think that the bench would be the last thing that you would be worried about and concerned about. And I always thought that, say, for example, that year that they took the Europe Draymond Green, like Danny, he never swung for the fences. He never swung for like a guy that had high upside and a low floor. And all those picks, missing out on those picks, and then putting all your eggs into the Hayward basket and not getting a return out of them. Even if you didn't like Turner, that would have been 2 players on the roster. I think you guys could have used the Warren this year. But as down as everybody's on the Celtics and down as I am on them, like in the segment we do most impactful player, most intriguing player, like I still think that with Tatum and Brown, if they take another leap, if Tatum takes a leap into the stratosphere where he becomes like a top 5 player, which he can definitely do, and Jaylen Brown takes a leap where he becomes a top 15, top 12 player, then that changes everything for the Celtics. So I know
here's my thing with that, though. This is how I look at it, is
okay.
You look back at, let's say, Jaylen Brown's rookie season, and you go back to Jaylen Brown's rookie season, they made the Eastern Conference Finals with Isaiah Thomas as the lead dog. And at that time, you were playing, let's be honest, the Celtics were just playing with house money. Their expectations weren't really high as a team. They were just kind of playing the long game. They had Brooklyn's pick. They had this, they had that. They had all of these picks, and they were playing the long game to see what player that they could acquire in free agency and when they were going to cash in that lottery piece, or they were going to cash in that chip, that Brooklyn pick, when they were going to cash that chip in. So if you look at that year's house money, and you get Jaylen Brown in the draft, and you see that he looks like he could be an all-star player. He looks like he could eventually take a leap. But then you go on to the next season, which is 2017. You acquire Kyrie Irving. You get Gordon Hayward there. You draft Jason Tatum. Unfortunately, Gordon Hayward gets injured. Kyrie Irving ultimately gets injured. Again, that season you're playing with house money because your expectation going into the playoffs, your expectation is not high.
Yeah.
You don't expect to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, but which they did. They beat Milwaukee in 7. They beat Philly in 5, and ultimately they lost in 7 to the Cavaliers. So again, coming out of that season, you feel good about yourself because you say, okay, man, we were playing with house money, and we see that Tatum can be a star, Jaylen Brown can be a star. Next year, we're going to get Kyrie and Gordon Hayward back, and we still have Al Horford plus our bench. We're going to be ready to go. So you come out of that season and you go to the next season, and that that season they have the letdown, which, they lose in the second round to the Bucks. The Bucks completely dismantle them. But again, you're still playing with house money because your expectation is that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum would take that leap. You lose Kyrie Irving in free agency, however, you add Kemba. However, you still have Kemba now. The following season, you have Kemba, you have Gordon Hayward, you have Daniel Tice, you still have Marcus Smart. You still have a lot of players around them. They go to the Eastern Conference Finals again, and they lose to Miami. So now coming into this season, how I look at it compared to all those other seasons, you've always been playing with house money.
Yep.
Most part, you've been playing with house money. But now you're not playing with house money anymore because now you need Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to take that leap. It's not like you can lean on the fact that you have Gordon Hayward or you have Kyrie Irving. You still have Tito Horford. You have a solid bench, Morris and Mark and Terzier. You've always been playing with house money with the development of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But now you need it.
Mm-hmm.
You need it to survive. And they didn't put any players around them. So my question to them is, what happens if Jaylen Brown sustains an injury? What happens if Jason Tatum sustains an injury? Yeah. Kemba Walker not healthy. And even if when he does get healthy, you have to ask yourself the serious question. Is he the same player?
Yeah.
That's a big question mark.
And another thing that you have to realize with these teams that are thin and top-heavy like the Celtics is that COVID, like if a player gets sick and gets on that COVID list and they miss 10 days, that could throw your whole season into a loop. If Tatum gets sick and Kemba's not back, the offense is really going to struggle. One thing that I've heard in different places is Robert Williams being someone that could be an ascending player. I know that they signed Tristan and they have Theis, but I was interested in him playing, and I mean, because he has the athleticism. He was a top, player coming out of college. He was, at one point a top player on ESPN's draft board, and he slid down. And I think that he's someone that I would like to see. Sometimes I think with coaches they get kind of ornery with young players, but he's someone that I think that could play some minutes for you guys. But speaking about coaching, I think kind of the sheen that was on Brad Stevens as a coach, as one of the coaches, when he first started Brad Stevens for president, Brad Stevens was getting so much rave that other coaches were like becoming jealous of him, that I heard on the Zach Lowe podcast, and saying that he's not that good and you guys make him seem like he's turning water into wine. And I think this was the first year, last year, or this year still, but last season was the first time, especially in that series with Toronto, where people really start to question Brad Stevens' coaching. Brad Stevens, struggling with the zone, struggling to incorporate young players. They question his lineups. So I think this is a big season for Brad Stevens too. He's going to really have to show. Like now you have, you mentioned he playing with house money as a team. I think he was playing with house money as a coach. Nothing was really expected of those teams. Now you have this player in Tatum. You have this player in Brown that people think could ascend to this position. And the roster is halfway in, halfway out. What do you think about Stevens, the job that he did last year and in that?
Overall, as a coach, I think that he's done a good job. I think that he's a good coach. Again, they've played with house money, but that doesn't take anything away from him for what he has done as a coach. He's taken them to the Eastern Conference Finals consecutive times. He has been a coach that has won a lot of series that they expected to win. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. The only season where, I kind of felt we were let down was Kyrie Irving's last season. I didn't believe that the Bucks had a better roster than Boston. And for Boston to lose in 5 like that was very surprising to me. But as a coach, I think he's a good coach. But again, I just think that the pressure is on this season. The roster to me is a very, very bad roster. I just don't see how they're going to score enough points. You talk about the big additions of Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague, but is Jeff Teague really a big addition? at this point in his career, in my opinion, Jeff Teague's not better than Brad Wanamaker.
I think he has a little bit more offensive bounce to him. You don't think so? I think he has more juice to him.
Even listening to Zach Lowe's podcast, Tim Bontemps agrees with me, and that's something that me and you have had a conversation off the record. I told you that Jeff Teague's not better than Brad Wanamaker. Point is, Tim Bontemps said Jeff Teague's the most boring player in the NBA. He said when he just watches him, he just gets bored. He's very boring. So I just don't think at this point in his career, Jeff Teague is better than Brad Wanamaker. But again, are we going to say whether Jeff Teague and Brad Wanamaker makes you a contender? Obviously not. No. Yeah. But when your roster lacks depth, lacks scoring, I don't think you should be replacing your players with players that are worse. It just doesn't fit. So I'm just confused as to all the free agents that went for the minimum. Dwight Howard, Jeff Green, and Wes Matthews, and the list can go on. And obviously these players have to be interested in coming to your team, but I just didn't hear any free agency buzz as to them being interested in these players. You can't tell me that at this point in Tristan Thompson's career, he's so much better than Dwight Howard. I know that there's
I agree with that.
There's on Dwight Howard, and I get it, but you can't. You just couldn't force me to believe that at this point in his career, Tristan Thompson is so much better than Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that 1,000%. I don't understand Dwight getting the minimum again this year.
I would never understand that. If you watch the playoffs, if you watch the regular season, Dwight Howard was a solid player. So I'm confused as to Danny Ainge, why he would go into this season and allow so much of the burden to be put on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as players. I understand that if you look at it, they're thinking is, okay, well, when playoffs come, we're gonna roll 6 deep. We're gonna roll, Tristan Thompson, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, and Grant Williams. I think those are the 6 players that you can count on being.
You need 8. You need 8. You need 2 more.
Exactly.
Yeah. You need. But then there's Teague. Maybe you count Teague. And then maybe you hope one of these rookies like Romeo Langford, his name. I've never seen this Romeo Langford kid play. It's 10 minutes.
Romeo Langford is, he's a big wing with a long wingspan that they can count on as a defender. But again, basketball is about scoring points. And I'm not taking anything away from the defensive side of the ball. But when you look at this roster, when you say Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, where's the offense going to come from after that? Where's the offense going to come from? And then you throw in Kemba Walker. But again, Kemba Walker is coming off a season where his play was up and down. And I get it. He had an injury that he was dealing with. But then you're coming into this season. He's not healthy. He's not going to be ready for the start of the season. And we all know that when you're coming off a knee injury or you're coming off a major injury, it's going to take some time for you to get back into the flow of the game, get back under you, and to have this expectation that he's going to come back and be the same player he was in Charlotte. To me personally, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but I don't think he's the same player anymore. I know it's 1 season removed, but I'm not sure if he's going to be that same player anymore.
I question that signing when it happened, just the amount of years, and he's a smaller guard, and you know how they don't age well. But when he did play and he was healthy, he did score. He was a threat. The boxing one kind of confounded him a bit, but like you said, it's depth, and it's be interesting to see. A lot is going to be put on Tatum and Brown's shoulders.
And I just don't think that that's fair. I just don't think that that's fair, because if you look around the league, what other superstar tandems are being asked to do that are considered contenders? If you want to say that Boston is where are pieces around? Where's the shooting? Where's where's the depth on the wing? Where's all these things you need to be a contender? They don't have it. So how could you you could put this expectation on their shoulders and say, hey, we're a contender, and you didn't add no pieces around them. You didn't give them anything. So to me, I'm not saying that they're going to regress, but if they didn't take a massive leap, or they didn't take this leap that everyone is expecting this year, I wouldn't be surprised, because you're asking to me personally, you're asking too much of them. Yes, Tatum to me is a superstar, but where is the help around him? Where's the help around Jaylen Brown? I just think that they're asking for too much, and that's just why I'm down on them. I have them finishing anywhere from 5 to 8. I just don't see them being better than Brooklyn. They're not better than Milwaukee. Milwaukee's going to win a bunch of games like they always do. I think Toronto's a little bit deeper than them. I think Philly's better. I think that Philly has always been a good team. I think with Doc Rivers and the shooting that they add, they'll go back to kind of being the team they were. So I don't see how Boston's better than any of those 4 teams. And then you start talking about teams like Indiana. Indiana is, they don't have the star power that Boston has, but they're a deeper team. And
you never know if Oladipo does bounce back. Yeah.
Oladipo returns to form. They're deeper. Deeper teams tend to win more regular season games. So, again, when you start talking about all of this stuff, you talk about these teams, I didn't even talk about Miami. So, At another team, are they better than Miami? I would say no at this point. So, I've listed 5 teams that they're not better than, and I just don't see them winning more games. So, again, now we slide down from 5 to 6 to 8. We're at the 8 range. So I just don't see them, fitting anywhere in that. I would be totally surprised. I just think that Danny this year, he whiffed on the roster, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's like, the whole plan was that they could have the best of both worlds. They could be a contender with the Kyrie Irving and the, Gordon Hayward, and then you have this young team, so you could have this baseline of continuity for 15 years or whatever. And I think that it looks like the builders already do on it. I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if they're in a situation where they have to play a play-in game to get in, because I'm high on like a Washington. I'm high on, a lot of these teams that are on the bottom of the fringe. And like I said, with the COVID situation, if they get a massive COVID outbreak, I think they're in big trouble. So the impactful and important, impactful and intriguing players. So I think this year for the Celtics, we talked about their overall depth. My most impactful player for them is Jaylen Brown. We've talked about his game, in particular his handle. And he's going to have opportunities. I think with ball handling too is also about situations and getting repetitions. And because he was such a weak ball handler, and you had Tatum and you had Kemba and Gordon Hayward, he never had an opportunity to really actually work on them and being pressed into game situations and figuring out how he's going to attack certain matchups. So to me, I think he's the most impactful player. If he takes a leap, if he does get a stronger handle and becomes like a top 12 player, then I think a lot of these questions are just off the star power of him and Tatum together. I think that covers up a lot of their holes. So who you think is probably the most impactful player for this season for them?
I would agree. I would say it's Jaylen Brown. I think that Jaylen Brown has to take that leap, and I think that the glaring hole in his game, again, you said it's his handle, and I think that it's the reason why to half court sometimes, because his handle is not really tight enough, and you can see that he struggles to get to his spots because of his ball handling. So if he takes his ball handling to that level, he doesn't have to be Kyrie Irving or Steph Curry. He doesn't have to be that kind of player, but his handle needs to get to a point where he can get to his spots and create the kind of offense that he wants, without always being set up by another person. So he has to get his handle tighter. But I would agree that he's the most impactful player this season. They need him to take that leap, because you kind of know where Tatum's at, and you've kind of seen Tatum be the 1A player, and you can see that, okay, well, Tatum doesn't really have many holes in his game offensively. I would like to see Tatum become a little bit stronger. It looks like he gained weight. It looked like he's added some muscle so that he could be a better finisher around the rim, and he can be more aggressive to the rim and finishing through contact. But I would agree that Jaylen Brown is the most impactful player. He has to work on his handle, and I think if he does, he can easily become a top 12, top 15 player this season.
And then most intriguing to me is Robert Williams, his Time Lord, because you watch him play, he's just crazy athletic, shot blocking, finishing at the rim, alley-oop threat. And if he starts, I mean, I know you guys signed Tristan Thompson, and you have who I think is hurt right now. You have Tristan Thompson, you have Daniel Theis. But just the upside of him, if you could ever hone him, I think if any season you would try to give someone burn and try to maybe overplay somebody, it will be this season, and it will be him. I think if he becomes like not a Dwight Howard, but DeAndre Jordan, or even Tyson Chandler type player, I mean, I think that's his ceiling. That he could be a player like that. If he starts to move in that direction, that changes things for you guys too. So what do you think? Who's your most intriguing player?
I like your assessment, but I'm gonna go with Grant Williams. Grant Williams.
He's funny to me because I don't know what position he plays. Like, he looks like a throwback center. He's 6'6". They tell me he's a power forward. I mean, he makes plays. He makes enough plays though.
Yeah,
he played well in the playoffs. I can't knock him.
Exactly. So, and he's a player that he can guard. It looks like 2 through 5, 3 through 5. So to me, he's an intriguing player because he allows them to be versatile with their lineups. So if he improves on his shooting and his decision making, his playmaking ability, I'm very intrigued to see how Brad Stevens uses him. I'm intrigued to see if Brad Stevens starts him at some point of the season, just because to start the season, Kemba Walker is out, Romeo Langford is out, Daniel hurt. Tristan Thompson is dealing with a hamstring injury. So I'm intrigued to see, does he start Time Lord and does he start Grant Williams? How much does Grant Williams play? What kind of position he puts him in? And what kind of role does he serve in the playoffs, ultimately when the playoffs come? So I'm just kind of interested to see because I'm I over the last couple of years, I kind of started to like players like Draymond Green because, they can do so much for you as far as playing or playing them at the 5, having them guard, the best wing on the opposing team, and you can use them in a lot of different ways. So yes, they might not be the best players, but they allow your lineups to be versatile. So
yeah, they're glue guys. That's an interesting way to look at him because another thing is, like, because he's a power forward, maybe he gets to the point where he can start posting up switches and posting up smaller players.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So who do you think is going to be the starting 5 for the Celtics going into the season? Do they start Smart? What do they do with? So
I mean, with Kemba Walker out, it's hard to say, because if you start Marcus Smart, where are the points going to come from the bench?
Yeah.
Where are the points going to come from? I
think you could probably stagger people. You could stagger him. We could go over time. You could stagger him. Maybe stagger Tatum and Brown. Start all of them and stagger them. So you make sure you have one of those 3 in the lineup at all times.
Yeah, I just, with when you take Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum off the floor, I just think that this team is going to struggle to score. I know it's the preseason, but the game they just played on Tuesday night against, it was evident. Yeah. This team is, God bless their souls, Ojale and Time Lord and all these players, they are going to struggle to score. It's evident. I just don't see where the points come from. But to answer your question, if I had to make an assessment now, I would say they would probably go Smart, Brown, Tatum, Grant Williams, insert big. Tice, Tristan Thompson, time, insert a big.
Yeah, I that makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think Smart is gonna. I think you probably start them and then you just stagger them.
You just
Um,
dagger from there, or you either start Jeff Teague at point guard and you bring Marcus Smart off the bench. At least Marcus Smart can give you energy and can give you veteran leadership and stability off the bench. I'm not too high on Marcus Smart as a consistent offensive player that you can hang your hat on and say, hey, this guy's going to give us consistently 15 points off the bench. I don't think that you can entrust Marcus to that role. Marcus, a very good player, but I don't think that that's his game. That he has that kind of game where you can entrust and say, "Hey, we know we're getting 15 to 17 from Marcus Smart off the bench."
yeah, so yeah, I would be interesting to see who they start, and I think that trade exception is big too because they're going to use it. They have to use it. I
Yeah.
don't think that you can let that lapse. I don't think you can let Kyrie and Hayward walk out the door and get nothing for him. So they're going to use it. So who fits in there? What type of player they target at that position? That's going to be key. So we can end it with so playoffs. You've already. I think that they're definitely going to be a playoff team. It's just the seeding. And it just depends on Tatum and Brown, what type of leap they take. But right now, if a gun to my head, I'm in the same range that you kind of mentioned about the 6th, 7th range. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with 6-7, and that's barring any COVID stuff, any
Yeah,
injury. We're not gonna talk. We can't predict the future, so you can't talk about kind of stuff. And obviously, that's a factor for other teams as well. So other teams could be impacted by injuries or COVID. But if we took COVID and injuries out of the equation, like I said, I have them anywhere from 6 to 7, and six through 8, or potentially 5 through 8, because maybe they could supersede one of those teams, Miami, maybe one of them, but I just don't see them ending anywhere in the top 4. But I have them there. And as far as playoffs, time will tell. I think that Brad is a good coach, and depending on the buyout market and trades and what they can, with that trade exception, will ultimately tell me where they can finish in the playoffs. Right now, if I had to say, okay, well, this is the team that they take in the playoffs, I don't see them beating any of those teams at the top. I just don't. They don't have enough scoring. They don't have enough playmaking. They don't have enough diversity to beat any of those teams. I just think that they're asking too much of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and that question mark over Kemba Walker is just for me at this moment is too much to believe that they could beat the Nets, or they could beat Miami, or they could beat Milwaukee in a series. It's too much. There's too many questions. So ultimately, we'll see what happens on the buyout market. We'll see what happens on the trade market. I've read a couple articles about Danny having something up his sleeve, and this is obviously not the roster he's going to take into the playoffs. So ultimately, we'll see what he
yeah, we'll
does.
see then. Yeah, we'll see. He always trading. I heard Brian Windhorst. They've been talking about hinting to some massive trade or some massive move that's going to come out in a week or so. So who knows what team is involved and what's going to happen with this. So we'll see. All right, bro. Thanks for doing this with me. 30 teams, 30 minutes on the Celtics. And we'll circle back later on this week when we talk about like our season predictions and stuff. I'll put you on that one as well.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, man. Go on.